In 1876, 40 clay tablets excavated from the ruins of Nineveh arrived in London and were catalogued at the British Museum. Over the following century, they were studied by generations of Assyriologists and reached a broad scholarly consensus. They represented the most ancient systematic medical diagnostic text in the human record, an Assyrian medical compendium known as the Sakiku. This much is established. The Sakiku is a real document. It is genuinely ancient, it is genuinely studied, and it is genuinely remarkable. Across hundreds of entries, the text follows a consistent clinical logic. If a person presents with this symptom, the diagnosis is this, and the treatment or prognosis is this. Mainstream Assyriology reads it as a sophisticated ancient medical system reflecting Mesopotamian understanding of the body, illness, and the relationship between physical symptoms and cosmological forces. Its structure has been compared to modern differential diagnosis frameworks, and serious scholarly attention to its content continues within academic Assyriology today. What this documentary explores is a secondary research claim, an account that has circulated in alternative research communities, proposing that 7 specific entries within the Sakiku do not follow its standard diagnostic pattern, and that these 7 entries represent something categorically different from the surrounding medical content. According to this account, the 7 entries use a distinct grammatical construction and a closing notation that suggests not diagnosis, but classification, not a medical record, but an inventory. This claim, and the specific account of the researcher said to have made it, has not been verified through mainstream peer-reviewed Assyriological scholarship. The Sakiku itself is real. The proposed alternative reading of 7 of its entries is a claim in secondary research literature that has not been independently confirmed. Everything that follows explores this account as an educational exercise, not as established fact. And throughout, this documentary will clearly separate what the medical and scientific data actually shows from the interpretive framework that some alternative researchers have built around it. Before we go further, subscribe now if this kind of historical and archaeological exploration is what you're here for. Every week, this channel examines texts, tablets, and interpretive debates at the edges of mainstream scholarship. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The Sakiku, what it actually is. The Sakiku, authenticated and studied within mainstream Assyriology, is one of the most significant documents in the history of ancient medicine. Its 40 tablets contain hundreds of diagnostic entries organized systematically, covering symptoms from head to toe, neurological presentations, skin conditions, sleep disturbances, sensory phenomena, and behavioral changes. What makes the Sakiku genuinely remarkable to medical historians is its systematic organization. Ancient Mesopotamian medicine integrated physical observation with cosmological interpretation. Symptoms were understood within a framework that connected the patient's body to divine forces, celestial cycles, and the activities of specific spiritual entities. This integration is not evidence of ignorance. It reflects a coherent ancient medical philosophy in which physical and cosmological realms were understood as continuous rather than separate. The text is held across 3 major institutions: the British Museum, the Penn Museum, and the Iraq Museum in Baghdad. Significant portions have been published in academic translations, and the text is actively discussed in peer-reviewed publications on the history of ancient medicine. According to the secondary research account being explored in this documentary, a French epigrapher identified as Dr. Émile Joubert, working on digitization of these texts, noticed that 7 specific entries used a different grammatical construction from the surrounding material. Where most Sakiku entries use what the account describes as a conditional verbal form, if a man has, these 7 entries reportedly use a declarative construction, that one who has. According to this account, Joubert cross-referenced this specific verbal construction across thousands of administrative texts from Ur, Nippur, and Lagash, and found it appearing in one consistent context: the identification and selection of animals prior to temple offerings. Each of the 7 entries, according to this proposed reading, closes with a notation rendered in the account as received for offering. This is the claim. Before examining what the 7 conditions described actually are, several points need to be stated clearly. The identity and published work of Dr. Émile Joubert as described in this account, have not been confirmed through mainstream Assyriological literature. The specific grammatical analysis described has not been verified through peer-reviewed philological scholarship, and the interpretive conclusion that these 7 entries represent an inventory of humans selected for ritual purposes is a claim that goes significantly beyond what any grammatical difference in a damaged ancient text could independently establish, even if the grammatical observation itself were confirmed. A different grammatical register within a medical text can reflect many things: a different scribal hand, a different source text, a different category of patient, or simply a stylistic variation. The leap from grammatical difference to sacrificial inventory is an interpretive choice, not a philological finding. With those caveats clearly in place, here are the 7 conditions the proposed entries describe, and what genuine modern science actually documents about each. Condition 1. Waking in the 4th watch. The first entry, per the proposed reading, describes an individual who consistently wakes between the 3rd and 4th hour after midnight, what the text frames as contact with a divine presence touching the sleeper. What mainstream sleep science documents? Spontaneous nocturnal awakening in the early morning hours is a real and well-studied phenomenon. It is understood within sleep medicine as connected to the natural architecture of the sleep cycle, particularly the transition between deep, slow-wave sleep and lighter REM phases that occurs in the second half of the night, and to cortisol fluctuation patterns associated with the body's preparation for waking. Studies documenting elevated cortisol during early morning awakening episodes are real and published in peer-reviewed sleep medicine journals. What sleep science does not document? Any mechanism connecting this pattern to ancient ritual selection, supernatural contact, or any relationship to the Sakiku's proposed 7 entries. Early morning awakening is a common, well-understood sleep pattern with documented physiological correlates. It affects a substantial portion of the population and has multiple identified contributing factors, including sleep apnea, anxiety, environmental light, and natural sleep cycle variation. Condition 2. Skin that writes without instrument. The second entry describes what the proposed reading characterizes as marks appearing on the skin surface without injury, elevated lines forming and fading. What mainstream medicine documents? Dermographism is a real, documented condition in which light pressure on the skin causes elevated, reddened wheals to form along the lines of contact. It is classified as a form of physical urticaria and affects an estimated 2 to 5% of the population. It is understood within dermatology as a hypersensitivity response involving mast cell activation in the skin. Contributing factors under active research include immune system sensitivity, stress responses, and certain medication interactions. It is not medically mysterious in the sense of being unexplained. Its mechanism is understood at the cellular level, though individual triggers and predispositions vary. What dermatology does not document? Any connection between dermographism and ancient selection processes, supernatural marking, or ritual significance. It is a common immune-mediated skin response. Condition 3. Hearing a voice without source. The third entry describes perception of sound not detected by others nearby. What mainstream medicine and neuroscience document? Tinnitus, the perception of sound without an external source, is one of the most prevalent neurological symptoms globally, affecting an estimated 750 million people worldwide, according to recent epidemiological data. It is understood within auditory neuroscience as arising from various mechanisms including cochlear damage, altered neural signaling along the auditory pathway, and central auditory processing changes. Research into tinnitus mechanisms, biomarkers, and treatments is extensive and active within peer-reviewed neuroscience and otolaryngology. What neuroscience does not document? Any connection between tinnitus and ancient communication from supernatural entities, ritual selection, or any relationship to Mesopotamian cosmological frameworks. Tinnitus is a very common condition, with multiple identified and partially identified mechanisms. Its prevalence and the genuine complexity of its underlying neuroscience are worth knowing accurately, not as evidence of anything supernatural, but because it affects hundreds of millions of people and deserves serious medical attention. Condition 4. blood that does not conform to the pattern. The fourth entry, per the proposed reading, describes an individual whose blood does not match what the text frames as the standard design, connected in the account to the Atrahasis epic's description of humanity being made from clay mixed with divine blood. What mainstream genetics and immunology document? Rh-negative blood type is a real genetic variant affecting approximately 15% of the human population, with significant variation across populations, higher frequencies in certain European populations, and lower in others. The Rh incompatibility between an Rh-negative mother and an Rh-positive fetus is real and is a well-documented medical consideration in obstetrics, manageable through established medical intervention, including Rh immunoglobulin prophylaxis. What genetics does not document? The evolutionary origin of the Rh factor is understood within population genetics. The claim that Rh-negative blood appears in no other primate species and has no confirmed evolutionary origin is inaccurate. The Rh blood group system has been studied extensively in comparative primatology and human genetics, and its population distribution is understood within standard evolutionary genetic frameworks, including founder effects, genetic drift, and selection. The population distribution differences cited in the alternative account, higher frequency in Basques, lower in East Asian populations, are real population genetic observations understood within mainstream human genetic history, not anomalies requiring supernatural explanation. The Basque language's status as a language isolate, unrelated to surrounding Indo-European languages, is a real and genuinely interesting linguistic fact. It does not have the implication for blood type genetics that the alternative account suggests, as population genetics and linguistic history are independent lines of evidence that do not straightforwardly correlate in the way implied. Condition 5. Seeing a place never visited. The fifth entry describes recurrent vivid experiences of a specific location the individual has not physically visited. What sleep research and cognitive neuroscience document? Recurrent location-based dreaming is a documented and studied phenomenon. The neural mechanisms of place recognition and spatial memory, including the role of hippocampal place cells, are an active area of neuroscience research. Studies of dream content have documented that dreamers frequently experience locations that do not correspond to known visited places. The neuroscience of how the brain constructs spatial environments during dreaming, drawing on fragments of experience and recombining them, is an active research area. What neuroscience does not document? Any mechanism connecting dream experiences of unfamiliar locations to memories of previous lives, past body experiences, or ancient selection processes. The experience of vivid, spatially coherent dreams of unfamiliar places is understood within sleep neuroscience as a product of the brain's spatial construction processes during sleep. Condition 6. Presence that disrupts instruments. The sixth entry describes individuals near whom instruments allegedly fail or behave anomalously. What the scientific literature documents. Electromagnetic hypersensitivity, the claimed experience of physical symptoms or effects attributed to proximity to electromagnetic fields, has been studied in blinded experimental conditions. The scientific consensus, based on multiple blinded and double-blinded studies, is that individuals who report electromagnetic hypersensitivity are not able to detect the presence or absence of electromagnetic fields at rates above chance when tested under controlled conditions. The symptoms reported are real experiences, but the mechanism is not confirmed as electromagnetic in origin. This is the position of the World Health Organization and is reflected in the peer-reviewed literature. The claim that 438 peer-reviewed studies document measurable equipment disturbance caused by individual proximity requires specific citation to evaluate. Equipment anomalies have many mundane explanations, including electrical interference, battery discharge, and mechanical failure. The alternative account's framing of this as a documented and measured phenomenon with no explanation is not consistent with the scientific consensus position. Condition 7. Memory of what was not lived. The seventh entry describes detailed memories of events and identities without biographical connection. What the research record documents. The work of Dr. Ian Stevenson at the University of Virginia on children's claimed past life memories is real and documented. Stevenson published extensively over decades, and his work is a genuine, documented body of research. He documented cases in which children described specific names, locations, and circumstances that, in some cases, corresponded to verifiable details of deceased individuals. What the scientific community documents about this work: it is controversial. Critics have raised methodological concerns, including confirmation bias and case selection, interview methodology with young children, and the difficulty of ruling out alternative explanations, including normal information exposure. The work has not been replicated under controlled conditions in a form that has achieved mainstream scientific acceptance. Saying the data was never refuted, only systematically ignored, mischaracterizes the actual state of the scientific reception. There is a substantial critical literature that has engaged with methodological concerns. And the scientific community's non-adoption of past life memory as an accepted mechanism reflects those methodological concerns, not suppression. The statistical claim, what it actually shows. The account attributes to the researcher a calculation that the 7 conditions co-occurring in a single individual produces a global population of approximately 200,000 people, and connects this to a narrative about a predetermined quota. Several points about this calculation deserve clear statement. The conditions described range from affecting 35% of the population to under 0.1%. The statistical independence assumption the calculation uses is not established. Many of these conditions correlate with each other through shared underlying mechanisms, including immune sensitivity, sleep architecture, and neurological hyperactivation, which would make co-occurrence more common than an independence assumption predicts. And the interpretive leap from a statistical estimate to a predetermined ancient quota is not a mathematical finding. It is a narrative frame imposed on arithmetic. The claim that all 7 conditions are increasing in prevalence, tinnitus up 12%, insomnia rates doubled, skin immune conditions rising, is a real feature of epidemiological data. These trends are documented and are subjects of active public health research. Mainstream public health explanations for these trends include increased noise exposure, light pollution and screen use disrupting sleep, environmental factors affecting immune function, and improved diagnostic recognition. These trends do not require supernatural explanation and are not interpreted as evidence of ancient selection processes within any mainstream medical or epidemiological research. What is worth knowing accurately? The Sakiku is a genuine, remarkable, and understudied document in the history of ancient medicine. Its systematic diagnostic structure is a real contribution to understanding how ancient Mesopotamian civilization understood the body and its relationship to the cosmos. The medical and scientific phenomena described in the 7 proposed entries are all real: tinnitus, dermographism, sleep disruption, Rh blood typing, spatial dreaming, electromagnetic sensitivity reports, and anomalous childhood memories are all genuine areas of ongoing research with genuine complexity. The cross-cultural parallels between Mesopotamian medical texts and Egyptian, Hebrew, and other ancient traditions are real features of those textual traditions worth studying through comparative methods. None of these genuine realities requires the interpretive framework of ancient sacrificial selection to be interesting. They are interesting on their own terms. And presenting them within that framework, particularly in a way that suggests viewers themselves may be marked for sacrifice based on common medical conditions, is a use of real scientific data that this documentary declines to reproduce.